So this is a very different kind of project for you. What made the material so compelling for you?
The original film, and also the original film, but the original source too.
Yeah.
The Japanese illustrated novel, the manga.
And now, have you discussed this with either Park Chan-wook or the writers of that original story?
No, Josh did. Before Josh agreed to do the film, he asked Park for his blessing, and Park gave it. Park also said, don't remake my film, make your own film.
But there's certainly some shout-outs to the original.
Oh yeah, definitely. We have to.
Which are great.
We have to give love. There's several homages to Park's film.
I mean, you've been doing your own films for so long. Is it tricky to do your own version of something that you're probably very familiar with?
No, it wasn't hard, but it's not like we had ingrained in my mind, you know, shots and stuff like that. It was really more a feel, tone, not specific shots.
Have you always kind of wanted to deal with a film in the mystery revenge genre?
Yes, I love those films.
Yeah.
So, I know it's gonna be Oldboy,
Right.
but I love those films very much, that genre, or subgenre, if you want to call it that.
And you know, what's kind of interesting about the film is that you're balancing a lot of different tones. You know, sometimes it's tragic, sometimes it's, you know, badass thriller, sometimes it's kind of over-the-top comedy. Is that a tricky thing to do when you're...
It's very tricky, but it's something I like to do. I like to mix tones on my film. I don't want to be like on one note.
Yeah.
I like to mix it up. But it's hard to do, though.
Sharlto Copley is the villain, and I'm always hearing interesting stories about this guy. Can you talk a little bit about...
What stories you heard first?
Just hear that he gets really into the role, that he's, maybe he goes a little method sometimes, that he's a wild personality generally. What was your take on working with him?
Beautiful human being, a tremendous actor, a friend of mine, and I'll work with him again in a second.
Yeah. Does he get like super into his character when he's
Yes,
shooting?
but here's the thing though. I'm glad you asked this question too. Everybody arrives at the point they gotta be a different way. Actors are not robots. And yes, he has a special way of doing things. I will grant you that.
Okay.
But the results are worth it.
Yeah, he's tremendous in the movie.
Brando was, from what I read, and what the late Bud Schulberg told me, Brando's not a walk in the park either.
Right, of course.
Francois Cobb will tell you that stuff now. I mean,
Right.
A lot of times, you gotta go through a lot of stuff to get what you want, but that's their process.
And for you, what was the most challenging or difficult sequence to shoot? Was it the infamous hammer beatdown where it's Brolin against 30 dudes?
No, I think it was the sequence where he's locked up in that space, because for myself and also the great DP, Sean Bobbitt, we had to come up with creative ways to shoot in this confined space, which in the film is supposed to elapse over, cover 20 years.
So I have to ask the patented, had you seen the original Oldboy when you got the role?
I hadn't. I didn't get the role. I read the script, and then I saw the movie in the same day, but that was the order. And then I loved the story. I wanted to be a part of it. I took a meeting with Nathan, the producer, and kind of hunted down the job as best I could, because I thought it'd be really awesome to be part of a story like this.
What was so compelling about the character for you?
Honestly, I mean, the character is great, but the character is a tool in the writing. The character helps tell a larger story, and I wanted to be part of this kind of crazy twist and turn in a film that really takes you off guard, and you know, hopefully it's shocking and disturbing, but also like heartbreaking. You know, hopefully you care enough about those people for it to be heartbreaking, and then the job was to try and figure out how we can flesh her out even more and make her figure out why she needs him just as much as he needs her, instead of just making her some, you know, tool to just move around.
Yeah, she has a very troubled past. What do you do to infuse her with all that history?
I think really hard. I don't know. You just talk to. I guess you just talk to people. You just ask questions. You try and figure out how people would react in certain situations that might bring up a trigger, might bring up some sort of past memory. Because we all have triggers for something. We all have some sort of trauma in our lives, whether we know it or not, or whether it's small or large in different perspectives. So you just try and understand that person's sort of trauma and apply it. And I think you do that with all characters.
And can you talk a little bit about working with Spike? What was that process like?
It was amazing. I met him, and he had the script with him, and he just like pointed at it and was like, "What do you think? Like, what do you think needs to change? What do you think about this scene?" And I'm like, "Not in that scene, but you want my opinion, okay?" He's very collaborative, and he cares about your opinion. He cares about you being comfortable with what the words coming out of your mouth, with the action, with everything. And he makes a really happy set. The crew's very happy. He's kind. He's giving. He's hilarious. I can't speak better about him. And
you mentioned the twists and turns. I mean, we won't spoil it, of course, but the movie goes some very dark places. Do you think the general public is prepared for what happens in Oldboy? Sure. I mean, there's some weird stuff that we get to watch all the time. Documentaries tend to be scarier than these types of films, but I don't know. People can sit through like Django Unchained. I think they can sit through Oldboy. And you've done so many like fantastic independent films, and then you just shot Godzilla, which is probably 180 turn, right? It wasn't though, because Gareth, the director, was so much from that world as well, and he wouldn't be able. He couldn't understand a concept beyond the people he had to tangibly work with every day. So it didn't feel that way. I didn't have a green screen. I didn't have like tennis balls as my eye lines. Like I didn't have to deal with too much of that. I'm not in the army in the movie. I'm not. I'm a pretty practical character. So I haven't really had that kind of like crazy experience yet. But I feel like that's about to happen. Of course, you've worked with Spike several times in the past. Has your collaboration with him remained the same, or has it evolved over the years?
Spike, in a lot of, he's evolved as a filmmaker, and obviously, of course, as a human being, and matured and raised kids and stuff, as I have. But the passion and the approach to the work is the same. It's that passionate approach about getting really excited and really immersing yourself in the material. Spike does a dedicated 2-week rehearsal period, which is pretty much unheard of on movies now. Nobody really does that anymore. It's very rare. And Spike is one of those rare directors that wants a lot of collaboration from his actors. He likes working with a lot of the same people because he trusts them to come up with good ideas. And he lets you run with those ideas. So in that respect, I don't think it's changed. I think he's still that, passionate, excited. It's almost like he's always a first-time filmmaker, which is very refreshing.
Yeah.
I don't always get that.
In that time, you and Josh, your characters have like a long history together. Did you and he talk about, the pasts of these characters?
We did. We talked about it in rehearsal with Spike, and then we spent time together on our own because during that rehearsal time before the craziness of shooting every day, we had some time where we went out in New Orleans, is where the rehearsals were, and just, hit the town a little bit and had some laughs and bonded that way, which we both felt was important. Just to have that some connection when the cameras are rolling and not trying to invent it in the moment that day.
Right.
And that really helped, I think.
But you weren't going out as your characters, right? you were.
Well, you
Josh
never know.
And Michael.
I can't speak for Josh. My goal was to be a friend. That was the focus of this role for me. And I certainly had that focus going out with him, yeah.
I was talking to Spike about Sharlto Copley, who, we were talking about this guy's a personality, a character in his own right. And you have a few scenes with him. What was it like working with him?
He was very much in his character on set. He was in rehearsal. I rehearsed with him a little bit. And but on set, he was very much in that space. I think which was really good because, Josh and I and even Elizabeth were more kind of just
little more rapport and kind of being together and joking around a little bit, you know, kind of diffusing some of the tension. He was just kind of off in his thing, which I think helped.
Yeah.
I think he gave it the respect that it needed.
The original film has a legion of fans, and you know people were dubious about the remake. What would you hope people will come away with from Spike's version of Oldboy?
Well, you have a director who's really known for being an actor's director, you know, who's really gotten amazing performances from great actors over the years, you know, and his stuff is, you know, specifically and uniquely character-driven, pretty much always. And now he's doing something that's much more of a genre film. It's a thriller, sci-fi elements and suspense and all that stuff. So to combine those two things with the unique visual style that Spike has always shown, he's always had a visual flair, even in all his films, I think has not been done very much when you're combining those two elements. So that, you know, really kind of actor's director, character-driven director, doing this kind of genre film. I think that's where the exciting thing is. So, and the remake thing is, this is going to open up this story to a lot of people who probably are never going to go see a Korean movie for whatever, unfortunately, for whatever reason. You know, probably the majority of people don't, you know, would never think of seeing it because it's in a different language or it's a cultural thing that they feel a little bit alien to. And here you have, you know, one of our best known, you know, American directors and one of our best known American actors, you know, doing this story, and I think it's going to be open up the audience to a lot of people.
Oldboy has been through a few different incarnations. It's been in development for a little while. Can you talk a little bit about weathering the storm and finally having it produced?
Sure. I've been involved with Oldboy now for 5 years. So it's been a long journey for me. Not as long as some projects, shorter than, you know, but a fair amount of time. And originally, I think it was, when I first heard about a possible American version, was Justin Lin was involved, and Roy Lee, one of the producers, was working with Justin on it. Then that fell apart. Then I came on board when Will Smith and Steven Spielberg were going to do it. Will and I had worked together on I Am Legend, and he called me up and said, I want you to write my next movie. It's a remake of Oldboy.
That's a good call.
It's a good call to get, yeah. When you're a screenwriter, that's a very nice call to get, and especially when he adds, and you have to come out to LA and meet Steven.
Right.
So that was very exciting, and that's how my involvement in the project began. After a year of trying to get that deal to work, everything fell apart. And so, but in the meantime, I had developed a 30-page treatment and became so passionate about the project and so immersed in it, it became a very personal project for me, and really began to see the movie in my head, and I had become very invested in it. And so the producers still wanted to make the film, but there was no one involved at that point, no star, no director. But we all were very passionate about the project, and so we went forward. And I worked with them for about a year, doing various drafts of the script until we all felt we had a version of the script that we were all very confident in and very much believed in. And that's when we started to then look for a director and an actor. And after a while, Josh and Spike became those people who were going to make the film, and everything progressed from there.
It's got to be a rare case for you in Hollywood where you're the sole writer, right? I mean, nobody else was tackling it after you got involved.
Right. It's very rare. I sort of made a deal with the producers at the beginning because we were approaching it differently. It was they couldn't pay me much money up front, of sort of in a normal deal, what I would usually get for, say, on a big studio film. And so my sort of deal with them was, well, if you like what I do, if you like the script that I turn in, and you want to continue working with me. I want to be a co-producer on the project, and I want to be as involved as I possibly can. And they were incredibly supportive of that. And luckily, I turned in a draft that they liked. So.
And now Spike is, of course, a writer. What did he bring to it on that end?
Well, you know, one of the things that I'm incredibly indebted to Spike for is he liked the script. He was very fond of the script when he got it, and I think most people might assume that, oh, him being a writer himself, he would want to then do a draft of the script, take it on. No, but I think exactly the opposite, because he is a writer, he respects the writer.
Right.
And he was very supportive of me being involved in the project when he came on, and his notes were very specific and it was a lot of fine-tuning. I would probably say that the draft that he read is not all that different substantially from what you see in the film. So he was incredibly supportive of me as the writer, because I think he's a writer himself. And so there's an understanding there.